Welcome to Overtime. I'm your host, Nick Messer. Joined here this Saturday morning by North Decatur's head coach, PJ Metz. Good morning, Coach.
Hey, good morning.
Our plan was to have players live in studio, but we're going to pause that for this week. Coach has given them the day off to recoup and pick up, get a little healthier this week after a pretty tough schedule this week.
3 games in 4 days. When you go into it and you think about it when November starts, you look at the games down the stretch, and not that you want to have to play 3 and 4 days, but kind of set it up this way to try to mimic what we're going to see, hopefully, come that first week of March.
Yeah, definitely simulating the sectional week, but, click at the right time, and that's all that matters, really. Last night, good win.
Good win last night. Coming out of the Jacksonville game Thursday night, another good, tight, contested ball game throughout that we ended up winning by 10. Logan Odell had suffered a little bit of a knee strain, so he went and got himself looked at and ended up being, not being confirmed without an MRI, obviously, but having some issues with a knee problem there, so we held him out last night. And then our other guy, Sam Crowell, who's been a good producer for us here recently, he's kind of had it in the back a little bit, so he's trying to help. We held him out, try to get him healthy, and still went to Knightstown and found a way to pull one out.
Yeah, and you guys seem to be really starting to click the second half of the season. I know the record may not show that, but 4 of those games are pretty close games.
Yeah, going back to our Batesville contest, we played some very good basketball here in the latter part of January and February, and any coach will tell you that's when you want to be playing your best basketball. Some of that, obviously we've got a lot of guys in roles that are excelling and doing what we've asked them to do and what we need them to do to be the machine of this team, so to speak. And one kid that's really came on in particular, who we got to see him play some great basketball this summer. He didn't start off the year the way that I know that he probably wanted to, but he's blistering hot right now from 3, and that's Wyatt Reisman. He went from, like 2-point per game score the first probably 10, 12 games, and here as of late he's averaging high teens, almost into the 20s, and shooting about 46% from 3, and shooting 6 to 8 threes per game. So, he's really come on, and our point guard and Owen is doing a great job of finding him in transition, doing a great job of setting him up. Because Owen's he's kind of carried a lot on his shoulders the first part of this season. When he's dribbling the basketball, he's got all 10 eyes on him. He's such a great penetrator and is able to get into the paint. And guys it's taken a little bit of time, but guys are now finally figuring out how to play off of him, and it's starting to pay dividends.
So let's just stay on that topic. Touch on some players. You touched on Reisman. Mm-hmm. Who else is stepping up leadership-wise?
I got to give a big shout-out to Mason Coons. Mason started this year. He was starting for us, and he's such an athlete, fast twitch, and he's long, and he makes a difference for us when he's out there on the floor. We have a thing that we stat through Huddle stat that it's called the VPS, the value point system, and it's a whole formula, and I won't get into the whole thing, but basically what it does is based on your turnovers, your shots taken, shots made, your free throws, fouls, and it breaks it down where a 1 is an average night, and anything above a 1 we consider a pretty decent game for that individual. A point guard like Owen, his VPS may be affected because he's got the ball in his hands more, and if you have a few extra turnovers, it might knock you down a little bit. But long story short, what I was getting at, Mason, the last 4 or 5 games, he is learned how to play so well off of Owen, where he's finding himself 3 for 3 or 4 for 4 from the field. He's collecting anywhere from 6 to 8 rebounds a game, and when he's down there around the rim, he's finding ways to affect shots, not necessarily where guys are not coming into the paint on him, but his ability to use his length and his athleticism for any shot that goes up gives us an extra dynamic that maybe we didn't have earlier in the season. And, I know he's been, and the guys have been on him, he does nothing but dunk all the time in practice, and we finally got him to throw one down last night. We ran a little Spain action for him and threw one up, and he got to throw in an alley-oop and gave us some energy at a big moment in time, and it was definitely a shot in the arm for us to help us complete that game.
Yeah, he's an exciting player. He's got confidence, and when it's clicking, he's come a long way. And with him, I don't want to say paying the dues. I hate that term, but
Yeah.
he's worked his way to get there. Kind of like Reisman. I remember, back last year, Reisman wasn't nearly getting as much playing time as he is this year.
Yeah, and Wyatt being a JV guy last year, he really came on at the end of the season, very similar to how this year's kind of played out for us. Whereas by the end of the year, he was probably I don't want to say he was not the first guard off the bench, but when we were pulling guys up, needing quarters, so to speak, Wyatt was the guy that we were kind of stepping in, and he had some big shots for us last year down the stretch as a freshman.
Let's talk seniors here for a little bit.
Yeah.
You want to hit on them and just how they've grown and where they're at in terms of staying strong to finish the year?
Yeah. I've kind of delved on Mason a little bit already. Just the growth, not just as a basketball player, but as a young man, from him as a seventh grader up till now, he's done a lot of good things. He's a very committed kid. I can't think back to too many times where, he's had to call in and tell me he can't make it to a practice or missed an open gym. I mean, if we've got something going on, he's there. And I do think he truly enjoys the game of basketball, which is a great thing for us as a team. Next senior we'll talk about Logan Odell. Logan got thrust into the starting spot as a sophomore, and we at that point in time, we had a really good senior in Caden Muckerhide, and we had a bevy of juniors, so to speak, and we had a situation arise where we needed another shooter to come in and play a spot. It's kind of like I was talking about Owen having 10 eyes on him. When Caden was on the floor, he'd had 10 eyes on him too. So we needed guys who could space the floor, and we thought Logan was our best option to do that. And since that sophomore year, he's come leaps and bounds and has been such a key part to the program and what we're about and what we're trying to do, all around from that standpoint. And he's got the ability to shoot the basketball. He does it really well. He's I don't want to call him a sneaky athlete, but the kid is a very good athlete. He can jump. He's quick. He's fast. And at the end of the day, he's missed some games here this senior year, and I'm sure it's killing him. He was out a couple games last week with flu B. Like I said, he had the knee issue go on. He got through the Jacksonville and was not able to play last night. So hopefully we can get him healthy, so to speak, so we can head into senior night next Friday strong. We can close out the season strong and get him going for sectional. And then the last senior that we have is Garrett Schwerin, and I could not be more proud of an individual for acceptance of the role that he's playing, how he's grown throughout the program, and the leadership that he provides to us off the floor and on the floor for that matter. But I don't ever have to worry about me telling the guys, hey, I need this to get done. I say it once, Garrett makes sure it gets done. And sometimes to a fault. Sometimes guys are like, get off, lay off a little bit, or so to speak.
Yeah.
But he's I believe he's class president. He's FFA president. I mean, there are so many boxes that you could check off in regards to him as a student and his involvement with what he's able to do and the things that he does on a day-to-day basis, that I feel like I've got a lot on my plate. As a senior, I know he has a ton on his plate. That's all basketball side. On the basketball side of things, the kid just does so many things that does not show up in a stat book. All the hustle stuff, all the stats, hands-on balls, coming up and creating extra possessions for us, either throwing it out of bounds off somebody to give us a possession back, or coming up with a loose ball. He's done a lot of things to help propel us here these last 4 or 5 games, to give us a little bit of an extra edge, so to speak, to help us be successful.
So let's throw that stat sheet out and ignore the record. What are you most proud of so far this year? What have they really done this year that you maybe didn't anticipate, or has moved along a lot quicker than you anticipated?
Probably the ability for all 9 of these guys to be effective And easier said than done without a ton of explanation. But when you got 9 guys, and my rotation typically is 7.5 guys. If you go back all the way through when I coached JV, coach freshman, like it is very hard to play more than 7 guys on any given night, just because minutes and guys have to get in rhythms and making sure that you got guys out there that should be at certain situations. And there have been trying and tough times for some of these guys, especially number 8 and 9, where maybe they're only getting 8 to 10 minutes a night. But I don't ever hear any talking behind the scenes, wanting more, wanting this, wanting that. They're all a great group of acceptance, and they've all stepped up in different times of need. Take Henry Kinker. Henry has played, probably the first 10 to 12 games, he was probably averaging anywhere from 8 to 10 minutes a game. And it was to the point where we're like, hey, we got to get him, some JV quarters because we weren't earlier in the season, and we kind of bumped him down. Same with Wyatt and same with Sam. Let those guys play a little bit more, maybe get them rolling a little bit. And Henry has probably been a big deciding factor for us defensively these last 2 games. He stepped in and guarded the other team's best player and gave Wyatt and Owen a break from that, so to speak. And role acceptance is such a big thing in sports. It's such a big thing in team that sometimes you have to sacrifice for the individual because that's what's best for the greater. So
yeah, and it's hard for those players to kind of understand, hey, this is my role, and kind of swallow that pride a little bit to, hey, I'm not going to be playing every minute, every quarter. I'm going to be, giving somebody a break, but I need to give, I need to be best defense out there.
Yeah.
I'm going in 2 minutes, and I need to play 5.
Right. And roles evolve, throughout the course of the season, and they definitely have for this team and this group. Not that it's a night-to-night basis, but I can point to numerous different reasons as to why maybe guys who's had minutes decrease or increase and the good things that they're doing just to make and help us be as successful as possible.
You hit on it a minute ago. We have your next game next Friday, February 20th, because you have 2 games left, correct? Yes, 2 games. So you have one this week, one next week. Of course, next Sunday is sectional draw. So that'll be at Tri. For those of you that don't know and you're planning on going to sectional, that's at Tri. But I just want to throw out there while I'm thinking of it, senior night is next Friday. So February 20th is senior night against Southwestern Shelby, 6 o'clock JV tip-off. So let's just roll into that. So Southwest Shelby's next opponent. A little different places where you're at and where they're at as a team.
Sure, and this will be our last conference matchup. Right now we're looking at finishing, I think Waldron knocked off South Decatur last night. So, if we're able to take care of business, second place is not where you want to be. But I want every single year, not that it's a goal, but if we're not winning conference, I want to be towards the top of the conference. And
sure.
And every year that we haven't finished first, we've at least been second. So, not moral victory, silver linings aside, but, taking care of business, Southwestern Shelby, keeping our standing, our legs to continue to improve within the conference standing, so to speak. And Southwestern Shelby, they graduated I believe he's a 1,000-point scorer last year in the Kaler kid. And I know they've had some personnel changes where they've had some guys decide not to play anymore throughout the course of the season. But they did have a decent JV team last year. And I believe there was a young man that was mentioned in the Indy Star not too long ago. Had a little article he broke the school record maybe for single or threes hit.
Oh yeah,
in
I do
game.
remember reading that. Yeah.
Yeah, and I try to take games one game at a time where I'm not forecasting too much. So other than just following them and looking at some scores, I haven't really had a chance to dive in. That'll take place. I'm starting to get some film rolling in now, but start looking at them, preparing for them earlier this week, and giving ourselves a game plan to go in.
Yeah, and typically they'll be a physical team,
Yeah.
and they'll want to play inside out.
Yep.
And that's just how Southwest is, Western's played. So with teams like that, do you find it harder to look for things different if you anticipate, all right, they've been playing this way for 10, 20 years? Or do you really sit down and watch film more in depth to be like, oh, well, they can't do that forever?
Yeah, I mean, it's more, it's kind of like how I adjust my offense and my defense based on my personnel. When I scout a team and I look at their style of play, knowing maybe historically that they've had certain sets to get certain guys looks, I may take that into consideration. But I try to go into every game with a blank slate, and here's what I'm looking at. Here's maybe statistically what they're doing. Here's what we're going to do to either exploit them or try to slow them down or stop them. So with Southwestern Shelby, like, they're definitely guard heavy now, and they take a lot of threes from what I've been able to gather up to this point. So it's going to be more of a perimeter-oriented game Friday night for them. So figuring out how we slow them down from the three-point line will probably be the biggest key for us.
All right, Coach, we're going to pause here for a brief commercial break. We'll be right back in studio with North Decatur boys varsity basketball coach PJ Metz. I'm Nick Messer, and this is Overtime. Welcome back to Overtime. I'm your host, Nick Messer, joined in studio here with North Decatur's varsity boys basketball coach, PJ Metz. We were just talking about player development and looking beyond the scorecards and scoreboards and, growth of a program, growth of players. So kind of want to stay on that topic, Coach, and let's just talk about what's coming up through the pipeline for you guys. I mean, we briefly touched on JV this year. Let's talk about JV junior high and the 2nd through 6th, I believe now, dirt road teams.
Yeah, JV guys, this is a group that collectively has kind of had a rough go at it, going all the way back to dirt road. Not necessarily that we're always worried about win-loss columns, but haven't had a ton of success in that category, so to speak. But it has been noticeable this year. At the beginning of the year, it was a very big struggle for these guys, but they are starting to put some points up on the board. And while it's not reflected in the win side of things, they've been in a lot of ball games here down the stretch where they've had opportunity, and that obviously means that they are getting better and that they are, putting in the time to make sure that they're doing the things possible to put themselves in the best position to win basketball games. But we weren't able to have a freshman team this year, and this is the first time since I took the job that we haven't. And had some upperclassmen decide they didn't want to play anymore, and wanted to pursue other things. So that kind of drew some of these freshmen up by default to the JV level. And then you get down into our 8th grade. Our 8th grade was able to win MHC this year. They had one loss that I know they'd like to have back. They were able to avenge that loss in the first round of the MHC tournament. Ended up beating them 30-some points in Hauser. But ended the season 19-1, conference tournament champions. Very excited about that class. I think 1 through 5, it might be one of the better talented classes that's came through for me up to this point. And then you get down into our 7th grade group, another highly successful group. Unfortunately, they lost in that first round of MHC to Hauser by 4, but they had a 17-1 year, and there's some kids in that class that really excite me for their future. And coincidentally, a couple of them, I've got their brothers right now, and I know the kind of time that their brothers put in, and it doesn't necessarily mean that they're going to be in the same boat work ethic wise, but from all indications that I've seen so far, I've got a couple kids in that class to really be excited about. And then you go down through, dirt road has wrapped up. Our 6th grade is actually playing in a tournament tomorrow at East Central, and then they're going to play in a school ball MYT tournament down in southwestern Ohio towards the end of this month. But as of right now, that group, we've got 2 really successful 6th grade groups. I had one group finish 15-3, if I'm remembering right, or maybe it's 13-3. Maybe we played 16 games, and that is awesome for the second group of our 6th graders, and not that it's a true A and B team. We've got some kids that could definitely play on the other team that's on that team and have had success and growth, and getting to play more minutes has probably helped them tremendously. But the other team, our other 6th grade red team, I believe I had a mom go back and look. I think since 2nd grade, maybe they're 63-1. Just all they do is win, and they're contagious in how they do it. It's funny watching them play. Whether it be in an open gym setting, or 3 of them actually played up on our 7th grade this year. The style that they play is contagious from the standpoint of they pass the ball, they move the ball, they play hard, and it's funny to see other guys kind of pick up on that and kind of run along with them. But going after that, we'll go down to our 5th grade. Again, another group that's got some pieces to be excited about. They had a really good year this year, and they actually play in a 5th grade tournament tomorrow at Batesville. Our 4th grade group is my youngest son is in the 4th grade group, coached by my brother, and they've had a lot of success. I think they've dropped 1 game here in the last 3 years, and I watched them. From 2nd grade up until this point, they've just got a lot of kids that they want to be there, and that's hard to find in today's day and age. Like, a lot of times you have stuff in the summer or you have stuff in the spring, and you might see kids filter in and out every once in a while, but if we've got something going on, it's rare if all 11 aren't there, and that's a great thing, and that's what you want. That means excitement and those sorts of things are up in the program. But get down through it. We had a really good year with our 3rd grade this year. My current 7th grade coach's father actually is coaching that group, and and I've got to, not that I got to catch and watch any of their games, but I try to check in with my Dirt Road coaches throughout the course of the season, and they said a lot of exciting things from a growth perspective in regards to that group. And then I talk about having high numbers. Our second grade had 2 teams as well, and both of them, got better as the season progressed. So from a future standpoint, I don't know if there's anything else I could ask for. We got a lot of parental involvement that's great. Got a lot of athlete involvement, which is great, and it seems like things are trending in the right direction and are growing, as opposed to you probably go to some other schools and athletics may be dying in certain areas, but it's definitely not the case here.
Yeah, and I will say hats off to you and your coaching staff, because you guys really do have a perfect model, almost perfect model, of a true feeder system, as they call it. You mentioned the players and the teams and the records, but one thing I want to touch on is the fact they're getting reps. Mm-hmm. They're getting quality practices. They're learning the basics early, second grade, and then when they hit 5th and 6th, those skills have advanced. And that's really cool to see, because not every program or every school does that. I mean, mm-hmm. for the most part, they all have the opportunity to do it.
Yep.
But you guys have it clicking, and it's building, and there's a lot of talent that is in that pipeline.
There is, and graduate from there, it may mean more to me than maybe somebody else who's not from there, because I went through it. I had a lot of coaches delve time into me and cared about me and my success, and nothing means more to me. Well, let me rephrase that. My wife, family, all, but you know where I'm going. Like, one of the biggest things and keys that I carry on throughout my life is what I'm able to give back to something that gave a lot to me.
Yeah.
And it means, not that sports are the end all be all, but I can go back and I can think about the academic side and the social part of high school, but nothing compares to the memories I made playing basketball and in sports and having good coaching and those sorts of things. So being able to do that for others, whether they decide to play all the way through their senior year or they decide to play through 8th grade and bow out, like, I want to give every kid that steps into our program an opportunity to be successful. I want to give every kid in our program an opportunity to be competitive and hopefully give them a good experience to make them want to come back.
Yeah, and it's paying off, and it's going to keep paying off, Coach. I was talking the other day with a colleague of mine about the high school transfer rule, mm-hmm. The 1 free year. And I told him, well, I know a couple places, one in particular, and of course I didn't give the name, that doesn't really have to mess with those things because they're growing their own program. And you just don't see that very often in high school, and you don't see it very often in college either.
And I know you're a fan of UK. I'm a Purdue guy, so I know every year this is pretty much 85-90% of what our roster is going to look like next year. Whereas maybe UK, it's like every year you're bringing in 8-9 new players, and it's hard to, not that we're comparing that to the high school side necessarily, but it's hard probably to be as vested as what you were 10 years ago before all the transfer stuff's like, you have a coach, you got a quality program, and hey, we've got this kid as a freshman, and he shows a lot of potential. By the time he's a senior, he's going to be a pretty dang good basketball player. Well, now it's like you've got this kid as a freshman, and if the coach steps on his toes the wrong way, that kid's transferring and taking off elsewhere now. And from the high school side, while they do have the 1-year free transfer rule, I don't see a ton of turnover coming at North. I feel like a lot of the North kids are there because they want to be there. And if you coach them, they want to be coached hard. It's not a situation where coach is mean to me, I'm going to take off and this guy's going to give me more opportunity. If they're in our system, going all the way back to Dirt Road for the most part, I don't want my guys, my coaches, so to speak, just patting them on the back and saying it's okay. I want them coached to a level to where they can take hard coaching. And obviously that advances the older they get and the more they understand. But it definitely changes the landscape with the transfer rule. So I'm waiting to see trickle-down effect and see how much it affects North Decatur.
Yeah. And so far this year, at least in our area, I haven't seen too much of an impact compared to, the Indy metro area is just insane with that going on. But I don't foresee it being an issue in our neck of the woods. But it's just, you never know. I mean, we look here, it's been probably a month or two ago, Ohio, the OHSAA, they announced they're going to do NIL for high school.
And from my understanding, the majority of the country is moving that way to the high school level. And Indiana has yet to follow suit, but I'm sure just like anything else, eventually we will. And you mentioned it a second ago with the Indy metro area. Like, a lot of the rules I feel like that are put in place from the IHSAA stems from issues that are going on in that hub up there, 465. All these schools that surround it, because if I don't like what's going on here, 10 miles down the road is another school. I can jump ship and go. And similar to the NIL, like I don't foresee at smaller 1A schools guys just throwing crazy money at to get to transfer. And I could be wrong. It's this NIL thing has went from, hey, let's let these guys benefit from their name, image, and likeness, to now, hey, schools, let's just write this kid a check. And it's hard to get behind.
Yeah, it's out of control, and we're not going to dive into it. We'd be here all day. We'd be here all day. But I would take an NIL deal. So if you want to give me here at Overtime an NIL deal, feel free to, reach out to me.
Fair enough.
I'll take it. All right, Coach. Really starting to wind down here the second segment, and I do appreciate you coming in. I know you guys had a game last night and giving the guys much-needed rest. Completely understand that, and we'll get them back in studio. We still got a couple weeks of basketball left to play. So anything else you want to highlight player-wise in terms of maybe somebody we haven't talked about or an aspect we haven't talked about? And I don't usually dive too much into X's and O's because I don't know if out of my 10 listeners, one of them's the opposing team. So I usually don't dive in too much to X's and O's and defenses and when you do what, just because of that. But anybody we didn't mention you want to talk about this morning?
There's some. I've got a group of sophomores who are playing, drinking from a fire hose, and were at the beginning of the season, but have made leaps and bounds this year. And a couple of them I haven't mentioned yet are two big factors in the fall, and even one more so in the spring, and Matthew Fields and Charlie Palmer. I think those are about the only two guys I have not mentioned. But the value they bring to us from a leadership perspective and an athlete perspective, they give us two things that we don't have. And I think of Charlie. Charlie's obviously a force to be reckoned with on both sides of the offensive and defensive line in the fall, and he does have a little bit of a passion for basketball, and he worked his way from a disappointing freshman JV season over the summer, kind of transformed his ability to get up off the floor and jump and finish, and it's came such a long way to where he's been starting for us the last 10 to 12 games here and really giving us great production, and so I'm very proud of him for that. And then Matt's passion is baseball. Baseball is probably passion 1, 2, 3, and 4 for him. And I know he has aspirations of going on, and by every indication of the amount of reps that he's taking on, it'll be a typical game day, and his dad Kevin is our trainer, and he's a great quality asset for us in the sports department. But Kevin will come in on, say it's a Friday and we're playing that night, and they'll come in and they'll throw, and he'll take cuts with the bat before we even play the basketball game. And I know how bad he wants it, and he works at it, and that's the kind of competitor that he is. He's grown so much as a kid, not just as an athlete, since he was a freshman last year. And sometimes having to be the varsity quarterback as a sophomore will do that for you. But it's crazy the amount of growth that he has made since last season playing basketball into this season. And I know just as a competitor and as an athlete, I call him a gamer, because a lot of times in practice, you're out there and you're watching him, you're just kind of going through the motions. But when the lights come on and things are clicking, he's definitely capable and willing to be the team guy and get things done that we need done out on the floor.
Yeah, definitely. Again, young players that are putting in the reps that are going to have to step up, and they've had to go to trial by fire, and it's paying off for clicking at the right time. I'm just going to go over some scheduling stuff here real quick before we transition into our final take. you guys do have senior night, the 20th.
Mm-hmm.
That's obviously home. Southwestern Shelby, 6 o'clock JV tip-off. And then you end the season at Rushville on the 26th with the 6 o'clock JV tip-off. So 2 games left. Sectional draw is this Sunday at...
That's a great question.
I think it's 6. Is 6 sound right? I don't know. It's this Sunday. I know
Sunday,
that much.
Sunday evening.
Sunday evening, yeah.
There you go.
So we'll find out here. And, of course, we know that county rival South Decatur will be in that same sectional.
Yep.
So, you know, and probably that's going to be a tough sectional. I'm going to stop a minute and talk about that because I think it's an underrated sectional this year in terms of who's there. You know, Tri's there. They're a fairly decent team. Morristown, South Decatur, you guys are in there. So there's some solid teams, solid fundamental sound 1A basketball teams in that sectional.
And Sagarin rating isn't the end-all be-all, but if you look at the Sagarin rating comparing the, let's see, it's an 8-team sectional, the top 6 teams are all right there, right next to each other. So it's probably never been as wide open from a competitive standpoint. You know, being able to any of these 6 teams could walk out of this thing with a sectional victory. I mean, a lot of times you go into a sectional and you're thinking, well, here's 1, 2, maybe 3 teams that have a good opportunity. This draw is going to be as important of a sectional for us that we've had in 6 years up to this point. And I don't care how the draw plays out, but you know, sometimes you want to avoid certain teams until you have to play them on that sectional Saturday night. And you know, however the case may be, however it plays out, it's going to be very important from a traveling standpoint because it's at Tri, so that's not a short drive either.
Right.
So you know, not that you'll take advancing any way you can, but maybe playing the 7:30 game on a Wednesday night is less favorable than playing the 6 o'clock game on a Wednesday night, if that makes sense.
Yeah. It does, and I'm excited to see the draw. And like you said, man, it's one of those sectionals where it's not going to draw attention from most people in the state because it's too small and too whatever excuse they want to give. But for basketball fans, true basketball fans, it's going to be a really good sectional to watch this year. Probably one I'd put top 2 or 3 this year as watching.
And look no further than the sectional atmosphere we had last year. You have, I would say, all 8. You have basketball-driven communities of fans who enjoy the teams that they root for. Yeah. And that bowl at Edinburgh was packed, whether it was the very first 2 games on Tuesday or it was sectional final on Saturday. Every game we were there scouting or watching or playing, and every single game the atmosphere was electric.
Yeah, it was packed last year.
It was, and it was the bowl at Edinburgh is unique from the sense that when I left there that Saturday after winning last year, you know, coaching staff and I kind of agreed if it was here every year, I'd take it. I loved it. I thought the bowl was great. I thought the gym was unique enough to give it a different feel, and obviously when you win it, it obviously means it even more so. But
that may
be,
Coach, that may be the – I'm trying to think here. That may be the place where the fans are closest to the court that I can think of real quick off the top of my head.
Yeah. You know, from the sideline perspective, there's some space, but you definitely feel like everybody's right there because –
maybe it is just a feel, but I feel like the baseline maybe is a little closer. I can't really think of.
I mean, you've got your baseline, then you got your pole, and then maybe a couple feet, and then there's your benches.
Yeah.
Your seating. But it definitely feels when that thing is full. It definitely feels like everybody's right there on top of you in a good way.
Yeah, it is a good atmosphere. Of course, it's one of the few bowls, as we call it, left in Indiana. Really, you just don't see that design too much anymore.
Nope. I don't know from a. Somebody made the comment that I don't want to necessarily say they're outlawed, but from a fire perspective,
maybe grandfathered in. Maybe, but
they won't let you build them that way anymore because getting people up and out in the event of a fire or something.
Maybe, but I still like the atmosphere. The nostalgia. It's kind of growing. Those gyms that give a nostalgia feel as well.
Yeah. When
you walk into them, so that adds to it. But yeah, back to the sectional. It's going to be a tough one. In terms of picking this and that. It's going to be competitive. And I also want to give a shout out to the EIAC because, again, it was my other top 3 in the state that is probably, I'm not just saying that because that's who's here on Overtime, but as a basketball fan who loves just watching any basketball game, those are going to be 2 sectionals. Well, not EIAC sectional, but
yeah, I know.
The majority of those teams are in the same sectional. I can't remember which one that is now, but it's going to be competitive.
And again, it's driven by communities that love their basketball.
Yeah.
And as a basketball fan, if you go up and unless it's a high marquee matchup between 2 players who are potentially Division I, if you go up some of these 4A Indianapolis schools and it's a typical home game, they're taking seats out because they don't fill them up. You know what I mean? So
yeah.
Not saying the following's not there, but you don't nearly have the community involvement and following that what you see here. It's probably more so than just southeastern Indiana, but obviously being around and from here, like I know Greensburg has big following, south, north, Batesville. I mean, you go all the way around and you can draw this radius of putting Decatur County in the middle, and all these schools, they love their basketball and they support it well.
Yeah, community strong, definitely.
Yes.
Definitely. All right, Coach, we'll transition to your final take, and we'll start wrapping things up. So I'll let you have the mic, and what do you got today?
Well, I mean, one aspect of the program I've touched on a little bit but haven't really given a shout-out to is the staff that I have on the basketball side of things that help all these kids be as successful as possible within the program. And obviously, from a coaching standpoint, they're all underpaid in my mind. I've got a kid. I call him a kid because he played for me. But Xavier Adams is one of our volunteer assistants this year, and took a job in Cincinnati and still makes the trip every single night that we have a game, making sure that he's there. He's been my lineup, my matchup guy, so to speak. Anytime we have substitutions and things are going on, he helps me with the scout and make sure we get the right matchups out there on the floor. And does a lot of good things for us. Same with our other varsity assistants. Brent Muckerhide's been with me from day one, and I could not do it without him, so to speak. He's always my voice of reason. Anytime I need challenge on something, he's not afraid to say, no, it's not going to work. We need to look at it this way. And you have to have that, because if you're surrounded by yes men all the time, you're never going to grow. You're never going to get out of your way of thinking. And he brings he's vice president transitioning down there at Batesville Tool and Die. He kind of brings a business model mindset to us, to not just what are we doing this year, but what's it going to look like 3 to 4 years from now. So he brings an element that's very valuable to what we do day to day. And then after him, Andrew Hawker's been my JV coach for 6 years. So the ins and outs of the program and the things that he knows our expectations are, he helps facilitate with that. Alex Stern he fills the role of our freshman coach, but not having a freshman team this year, he's been on the bench with us majority of our varsity games, and Alex is another one that I got to coach him as a JV guy, and he's very sports minded and sports oriented. The son of our football coach, obviously, so he gets it. He gets things that maybe other guys who aren't coaches' sons maybe don't understand to the fullest degree, and he brings valuable relationship because he coaches a lot of these same guys in the fall, so he understands what makes them click, what makes them go, and his basketball knowledge, again, for the games that he's there for, his suggestions on, well, let's try this, or what do you think about that, remind them of this, he definitely provides us with an aspect that's very, very valuable to what we do, especially when he's able to filter in and out of some practices. And my junior high staff, I'll just kind of mention those guys real quick. We talked about the 8th grade, and Brian Hawker coached them this year. I think this was his swan song, so to speak. He's moving up in his business at Draper, so he's not going to be as available next year. But got to go out with an MHC win. Ryan Johnson helped him and filled in admirably for him when Brian couldn't make it some of the games this year. And then at the 7th grade level, Josh Walton and Stephen Jones. Josh, this is year 3 for him. And those guys have done a great job growing themselves because up before Dirt Road, I don't believe, Josh played, but this is the first time that he'd ever really coached. basketball, and he's made leaps and bounds in regards to the coaching side of things.
Yeah, great coaching staff, great program, bottom up. You know, things are rolling. I was just trying to look and see who it was. Excuse me. If you're like us, you're fighting these colds and things, hang in there. I think the season's about to pass in about 5 more weeks. Something like that, right? Again, we've had PJ Metz here in studio, head coach of the varsity boys basketball team and head of the program, as we found out this morning as we discussed futures and things like that. So I did miss this morning regional wrestling. It's probably too late. I'm sure most of them's already went, but hopefully some of them still going. So good luck to those guys at Greensburg that are wrestling down there, or up there, I should say. So, Coach, we're going to wrap up today. Thanks for coming in studio. Wish you the best of luck. Again, he has game Friday. That is senior night for North Decatur against Southwestern Shelby. JV tip-off at 6 o'clock, and then the following Friday is at
following Thursday.
Thank you. Following Thursday is at Rushville, and that will end the season. We'll roll in the sectional, and that draw is Sunday. So there you have it, folks. That is all for Overtime today. I'm your host, Nick Messer, and we'll see you next time.